I want you to take a second and just picture your career.
Okay.
For a lot of us, or at least for our parents' generation, that image is, well, it's pretty standard. It's a ladder.
Right. A ladder. You start at the bottom, you climb up.
You grab that bottom rung right after you graduate. You work hard. You keep climbing rung by rung. Maybe if you're feeling really adventurous, you switch ladders once, and then you retire. That's the deal.
It is the classic deal.
Yeah,
And it's a comforting image, it suggests there's a structure or predictable path.
exactly. But I have a number for you from today's deep dive that just completely shatters that image.
Oh, no.
The number is 50.
50.
50. We're looking at this amazing conversation from TED intersections between John Ushai, who's a former YouTube and Instagram guy turned creator, and Michelle R. Weiss, a workforce strategist.
Okay.
And according to the data they're talking about, a baby boomer might have, maybe 12 job changes in their whole life? A Gen Z worker, on the other hand, could be looking at up to 50.
50 job changes. That's just overwhelming to even think about, isn't it?
If your working life is, say, 40 or 50 years, that's a new job almost every single year. That's not a career ladder.
No.
That's a career jungle gym. Or maybe just a series of frantic jumps from one thing to the next.
It sounds chaotic. And that is exactly where we're starting today. We aren't just talking about, how to tweak your resume. We're looking at the mechanics of a life that actually includes 50 pivots.
Whole paradigm shift.
Yeah, we're going to break down something called the Chipotle rule, which I think is just brilliant. We'll get into reverse imposter syndrome and try to settle this endless debate between hard skills and human skills.
And we really have to start with the architecture of the career itself, because as Michelle R. Weiss points out, our entire system, our whole education model is built for a timeline that it doesn't exist anymore.
The front-loading model. Yeah.
Exactly. For the last 100 years, the deal was you go to school for the first 20-something years of your life.
You pack your brain like it's a suitcase with all the skills you think you'll need for the trip. Then you snap it shut, you enter the workforce, and you just unpack those skills for 4 decades.
But the problem, obviously, is that the suitcase eventually runs empty. Or, the clothes inside go completely out of style.
It's actually worse than that. The half-life of a learned skill has plummeted. It's fallen through the floor.
So what you learned 5 years ago is already...
It's already half obsolete. If you learned to code 5 years ago or how to run a Facebook ad campaign even 3 years ago, a huge chunk of that knowledge is just not relevant anymore. You can't run a 40-year career on a 4-year degree. It just doesn't work.
So Michelle's idea is the shift to a learn-earn cycle, which, okay, it sounds great on a PowerPoint slide, but in practice, doesn't that just sound kind of exhausting?
Incredibly taxing. And that's the real friction point they get into. We all love the phrase lifelong learning. It sounds so aspirational.
Right.
But Michelle's argument is that while we have the catchphrase, we don't have the infrastructure.
What does she mean by infrastructure here? Like roads and bridges?
No, think about it. If you're 18, there is a clear path. It's government subsidized, it's socially accepted. You go to college, you go to trade school.
Sure.
But what if you're 42? What if you're 55 and your entire industry just got automated away? Where do you go?
You go to YouTube. Or maybe you pay a ton of money for some online course.
Right. But there's no systemic, seamless path.
Yeah.
There isn't a midlife career pivot university that everyone just knows about and trusts.
There's a huge void there.
A massive void. And so the burden falls entirely on the individual. It falls on you, the listener.
The burden of agency.
Exactly. Because the system isn't built to carry you through 50 transitions. You have to be the one to translate your own skills, to figure out how your past fits into your future.
And that burden, that need to be your own translator, is really where John Ushai's story comes in. Because he's basically a perfect case study in how to do this.
John is a really fascinating figure because he was on both sides of the fence. He worked at Instagram and YouTube. Corporate job.
Right, speaking across the table to creators.
And then he just decided to jump over the table and become one of them.
And usually when you hear that story, it's always so dramatic. It's like, I threw away my suits, I unlearned everything corporate, and I followed my passion.
Yeah, that's the cliche.
But John says the total opposite. He didn't unlearn his corporate past, he weaponized it.
He calls it skills translation.
Oh.
And I think this is so critical for anyone listening who thinks their current, maybe boring job is useless for what they really want to do.
He realized his corporate skills were basically superpowers in the creative world.
He has that great line about the Picasso of PowerPoint,
He does.
and you kind of laugh at that.
You do, but he talks about this colleague at YouTube who could just make these pitch decks that would sing. Now, to an artist, that sounds like soul-crushing drudgery.
Of course. But John realized that making a deck is actually, it's data storytelling. It's the skill of convincing a sponsor to give you money. It's understanding ROI.
So he took this hard skill of corporate analytics and just applied it to the cool job of being a creator, which brings us to a really specific debate they had: the defense of hard skills.
Right, because the advice lately is always, oh, it's all about soft skills. Just be adaptable.
Be a good person.
It's a pendulum swing, right? We realize robots can do math, so we decided only empathy matters. But John really pushes back on that. He argues you can't direct a vision if you don't speak the language of the medium.
He used that Photoshop example.
Yes, he learned Photoshop from a boss at YouTube. Now, is John sitting there editing every pixel on his thumbnails today? No. He hires people for that.
But because he knows the hard skill, he knows what to ask for.
Exactly. He can say, bump the saturation,
Right.
or can you fix the drop shadow on that? He's not just pointing and saying, make it look better.
That is such an important distinction. The hard skill isn't just for doing the work, it's for directing the work. If you don't know the technical language, you can't lead. You lack the authority.
You lack the authority of competence. But, and this is a big but,
Yeah.
Michelle comes in to balance this out. She agrees you need the language, but she argues that the human skills are the ultimate competitive advantage.
And I noticed she doesn't call them soft skills.
She hates that term
Yeah.
because soft implies they're easy or optional.
Right.
She calls them human skills.
Hmm.
Empathy, systems thinking, collaboration. And she makes a point I hadn't really thought of before. We have boot camps for Python. We have boot camps for data science. You can learn cybersecurity in 12 weeks.
Okay, sure.
But where is the boot camp for empathy?
I mean, usually we call that therapy or just, living life, but I see her point.
Her point is that we are born with the capacity for empathy, but not the skill. And in a digital world, those muscles are actually, they're atrophying. So while John says you need hard skills to speak the language, Michelle says you need human skills so that anyone actually cares what you're saying.
And John actually has a perfect example of how these two things work together. The first frame concept. This was, for me, the most actionable part of the whole conversation.
The 0.00 seconds problem.
Yes. So John wants to match a video comparing traditional fame versus internet fame. He goes to Hollywood Boulevard to interview people. The hard skill is knowing how to shoot, how to edit, all of that.
But here's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If he just walks up to people and says, excuse me, I'm conducting a survey regarding the changing nature of celebrity.
They walk right past him. And more importantly, the person scrolling on TikTok scrolls right past him. The audience is gone before you even start.
So what did he do?
He went to a print shop, old school. He printed a giant sign. On one side, a picture of Tom Cruise. On the other side, Mr. Beast. And he just holds it up.
That is brilliant.
It's instant context. He doesn't have to say a word. Your brain sees the two faces. It recognizes the conflict, and you immediately get curious.
Who are they? Which one is more famous? Yeah, that's the hook.
That's the marriage of the two skill sets. The hard skill was printing the sign and editing the video. But the human skill, the empathy, was understanding the viewer's psychology. He knew he had to make the cognitive load 0 to get their attention.
You knew that context defines content.
And that confidence to stand on a street corner holding a sign, that brings up the whole psychological side of this. If you're changing jobs 50 times, you are going to feel like a fraud at least 50 times.
Imposter syndrome. It's the constant companion of anyone making a pivot. Michelle even shared this really vulnerable story about it, how she became a professor and still felt like she was wearing a giant suit she didn't fit in.
Which I think everyone can relate to, but John threw out a term that I just absolutely love: reverse imposter syndrome.
This is such a powerful reframe. I think this one is really going to stick with people.
So walk us through it. What is that?
Okay, so standard imposter syndrome is, I don't know anything, and everyone else here is a genius.
Right. I'm a fake.
Reverse imposter syndrome happens when you gain a little bit of competence. You start listening to the so-called gurus in your new field. You hear the experts on panels or, posting on LinkedIn, and you have this sudden realization.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. They don't actually know what they're talking about.
They're very certain, but they are very wrong.
Exactly. John said he felt this when he left YouTube. He'd see all these social media consultants giving advice that was 5 years out of date, and that realization that the experts were wrong, it didn't make him arrogant. It gave him permission to speak up.
That's the key. It's not about ego. It's about realizing your silence has a cost. If you have the nuanced view and you stay quiet because you feel like an imposter, you are letting the loud, wrong view win the day.
Michelle even backed this up by referencing Malcolm Gladwell. She mentioned that Gladwell now qualifies his old work. He'll say things like, "This is what I believed at the time to be true."
Which is such a relief, isn't it? It means you don't have to be right for all eternity.
No.
You just have to be helpful today. Expertise is fluid.
And speaking of things that are fluid and changing fast,
Hmm.
we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the thing that's making skills expire even faster.
AI.
The robots.
It's funny because the conversation around AI and creative work is usually just pure doom. Mid-Journey is going to take my job. ChatGPT writes better than I do.
Total fear.
But John was pretty blunt about it. He said, if you are afraid of AI, it probably says more about your current skill set than it does about the technology itself.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
Uh-huh.
He's basically saying, if a robot can do your job maybe wasn't that human to begin with.
It's harsh. But he offers this amazing solution that he calls the Chipotle rule. And this might be my favorite takeaway from the whole deep dive.
I actually laughed when I read this. Please break down the Chipotle rule.
Okay, so picture it. You're with a group of friends. It's lunchtime. Someone asks, where should we eat? And what happens?
Total silence. Or, I don't know, whatever you want. It's paralysis. No one wants to pick the bad spot.
Right, but if you use the Chipotle rule, you just say, okay, we're going to Chipotle.
Now, someone in that group definitely does not want Chipotle.
Exactly. And they will immediately speak up. No, not Chipotle. I had that yesterday. Let's get Thai food.
So by offering a bad idea, or at least a very specific one, you force a better decision.
You break the paralysis. And John's argument is that AI is the Chipotle of the creative process.
It gives you the bad first draft.
Yes.
Huh.
If you stare at a blank page, it is terrifying. But if you ask ChatGPT to write a script and it gives you something totally generic and robotic, your brain immediately kicks in, no, that's terrible. I need to change this, fix that, make this line funnier.
It just lowers the activation energy. You're not creating from nothing anymore. You're editing. And editing is so much easier psychologically.
So AI isn't the artist. AI is the muse that suggests the bad ideas so you can get to the good ones faster.
And that lines up perfectly with this economic concept Michelle brought up from Daron Acemoglu, which is called so-so automation.
Define that for us, because so-so doesn't sound very threatening, but apparently it's the worst kind.
It is the worst kind. So automation is tech that's just good enough to replace a human, but not good enough to actually make the process better or more productive.
Okay, give me an example.
Think of a self-checkout kiosk at the grocery store that's always messing up. It replaced the cashier, so that job is gone. But now you, the customer, are doing the work. And there's still a human employee standing there just watching the machines.
So the human went from being a cashier to a machine watcher. The job didn't get better, it got way more boring, and they're probably paid less.
That is so-so automation. It displaces labor without creating real value. The goal, Michelle argues, is to use AI to skip the boring stuff entirely.
The good automation model.
Like the ATM. When ATMs first came out, everyone thought bank tellers were doomed. But the number of tellers actually went up.
Why?
Because the ATM handled the boring part, handing out cash. It freed up the human tellers to do the human skill part. Customer service, solving complex problems, selling other financial products.
So if we apply the Chipotle rule correctly, AI does the so-so work, the first draft, the basic coding, and we get to move up to the strategy and the relationship building.
That's the optimistic path. But it means we have to actually engage with these tools, not hide from them. You have to be willing to edit that bad Chipotle draft.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got the 50-job career, we have reverse imposter syndrome, the Chipotle rule. If we're going to distill this for someone driving to work right now, what is the big takeaway?
I think the big takeaway is that the safety net is gone. The linear career is over. You are going to have to jump again and again and again.
And to survive those jumps, you need a specific kind of toolkit. You need the hard skills to speak the language.
But you need the human skills to connect the context.
And you need to just embrace the fact that expertise is fluid. You don't have to be the world's foremost authority to start contributing. You just have to be willing to solve that rough draft problem and iterate faster than everyone else. But I want to leave our listener with one final thought. And it goes back to that infrastructure gap we talked about at the very beginning.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time talking about individual agency, about how you have to fix this for yourself because the system is broken. And that's true for survival. But
I would.
if we are the ones who figure this out, if our generation is the one that successfully navigates these 50 transitions, at what point does the burden shift?
You mean, at what point do we stop just jumping and actually start building a bridge for others?
Exactly. If the midlife career pivot university doesn't exist, maybe we're the ones who have to build it. Maybe mentorship isn't just a nice thing to do anymore. Maybe it's a structural necessity to prevent mass burnout for the people coming after us.
That's a heavy thought. It changes the game from how do I survive this to how do we evolve this?
And that feels like the perfect place to leave it. Go be the Picasso of PowerPoint, use the Chipotle rule, and maybe help someone else across the gap while you're at it. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.